It's the Morning Star Drive on 107.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Wednesday, May 15th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Health is Happiness, the Bible history word study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. Whew, everyone, how are you doing? Yes, it is Wednesday. We are at the middle of the week. Don't forget, tomorrow is Q&A Thursday, so get those questions ready. Send them to me whenever you can. I've already got a bunch of questions coming in. And if you haven't yet, please leave a like and comment to build our community. Just really happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up and support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday message titles, we have two of them. The first is The Person Who Has the Best Life of Faith, and two, Behold, it is a new thing, it is a new heaven and a new earth. Guys, I'm having a wonderful and awesome time here in Taiwan. It is Wednesday. I've been here for almost a week now, and I have, well, what's the date today? Today's the 15th, right? So I have about 6 days left. And, I got some plans here and there, but nothing really major or big, but just meeting people, scheduling people here and there. But ultimately, I am very much enjoying most of my time here alone, as weird as that sounds. But, I realized something about myself as I'm here in Taiwan. Okay? So, when we think about to ourselves, like, oh, what country can I live in? Or where should I live? Or, where's the best place for each of us to be? But I realized about myself is because I think most of the time I am alone. Most of the time. And I don't think that's uncommon because I think most of us are alone too. Like most of our time we're not spending with our kids. Most of the time we're not spending even with your husbands or wives or even your friends. I think most of the time we are more likely going to be by ourselves. And then you might think to yourself is like, well, what about work? When you're at work, you're with a ton of people. But even then, it's not like you are talking to these people constantly. You might have tons of people around you, but most of the time that we spend is alone. And I think Sasim talked about this a long time ago too. And he said that faith, the biggest part of your faith is actually just between you and God. Most of the time is just you and God. It's you alone. And I was thinking about myself, was like being here even in Taiwan, I was like, I could live here. I totally could. And it's actually not because of the country itself. It's just that most of my time is alone. And I realized when I'm alone, everything feels the same. I'm in a different country. I'm in a different apartment. I'm in a different place. But I'm still by myself. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I can live here because most of my time is in this type of state. I'm like, yeah, I can live here. I could probably live in Korea too if I was alone. I could probably live in many countries because I kind of see myself when I'm alone, I'm comfortable. I don't know. Do you guys ever get that? Like, I'm a super extrovert. I need to meet people. And I think that would be the biggest difference for me when I move to a country. Most of the time, I'll be comfortable by myself. But it's really, the one thing that separates one country from another would actually be the people that I meet. Not the people that live in the country, just the people that I know and the people that I meet. And when I was thinking about this, it makes me think more deeply about the people I meet in each country. And I realized it's not the country, it's more about the people that fit me better. Like, that's the thing that would matter way more to me. Of course, other things come into consideration. Like, for instance, I think I wouldn't want to live in a country that would be underdeveloped. Like, I don't think I would be comfortable in that type of setting. But if almost all things were equal, I think it would make a difference. Yeah, I don't know why I would think that, but yeah, I don't think I'd have an issue with living in most countries. Like, of course, we have preferences too. I would rather live in the city than in the countryside. I'm not sure about you guys. I'm a city person. I'm not a countryside person. I can go to the countryside for a little bit, but I need a city. Second thing would be is I would rather be by the ocean than the mountains if I had a choice. Like if I could only choose one. But it would be nice to have both. And that's why one of the best places to live is like Vancouver, because you have the mountains and you have the Pacific Ocean right there too. Some people might say, but how about good coffee? And I'd be like, yeah, good coffee, but that doesn't necessarily mean I need nice cafes. Because it would either be a nice cafe or a nice area in my house where I can make my own coffee, relax, and enjoy. Do you know what I mean? Like, as long as there's good coffee matters to me. But I think if there was like if I had a apartment or a house, and there was an area there that was like a cafe that was very comfortable. It's got a big window that you can see the trees or plants or something outside or even the water. I think that would be okay too. So yeah, is that weird? I was just thinking about that. Yeah, I don't know. For me, I was just like, oh, that's an interesting thought that I was having while I was kind of thinking while preparing for this podcast. But I was like, here I am sitting in the apartment and I'm preparing this. I don't feel like I'm in a foreign country at all. Well, particularly because I'm alone. I don't hear the people talking. I don't see the difference in culture. I'm just in an apartment, right? And when I thought about that, I was like, yeah. So I thought I could live in any country because most of the time I'm going to be alone. And the thing that would be the thing that I would look for that would make me want to be in one country more than another would definitely be the people that I meet. Yeah, and I think that would make one of the biggest differences for me. Interesting that I thought about that. Oh, yesterday I also remember I talked about finding your position because I did that Instagram post of me playing setter and I was out of position, stuff like that too. And I was thinking a little bit more deeply about it because people were commenting on it too. And a lot of the comments made sense to me also. I think I might have talked about this maybe a year or 2 years ago, but I think it also depends on your age, like finding your position. Because I think the younger you are, the more likely you're still searching for your position. And young people need to try out lots of things. And those positions that you find that you like to do and such when you're younger is most likely going to be temporary. I don't think it's going to be like I don't think it'll be like, what do you call it? I don't think it'll be like a permanent thing. Like that's the place I should be. And most likely young people will find a position. It'll be temporary. You'll move on, find new things, gain new skills. But, coming from me, understanding the age that I'm at right now, I think when you get older, you will find a place that fits you and all your efforts and work will accumulate into some expertise that you'll be asked to do or people will request from you or want from you, right? So I would say it's kind of like, this is what Sunseem said too. Sunseem said it's better to be an expert in one thing than just being pretty good in a bunch of things, right? It's better to be an expert in one thing than being pretty good in a bunch of things. Because if you're pretty good in a bunch of things, what's going to happen is all the experts are going to take over all the things that you're pretty good at, right? Eventually, everyone's going to be requesting the experts, not someone who's pretty good at a bunch of things. So I think eventually the one who is pretty good in many things will always be replaced by an expert. And the expert will always be in need and the expert will always be called upon. So I think it's something where if we look at it that way, eventually we have to find that place finding that place where you fit in this world, or finding that place where you fit in your church or your workplace or wherever it is, or even in your family. There's always going to be that place where you fit in, which is your position, right? So that's kind of like, I was thinking a little bit more deeply about that, and I thought, yeah, that makes a little bit more sense to me too. Oh, you know what? One of the things that I just realized, like it's hump day. We're in the middle of the week, right? It's Wednesday, but it's the 15th of May, which means we're already in the middle of the month. As crazy as that sounds, guys, we have reached the middle of the month. We're halfway through May. Do you know how fast this month is going? We're 2 weeks away from the middle of the year. 2 weeks. We're 2 weeks away from Alpha Day. So, it's quite, I'm surprised how fast time is going. We're already at the middle of the week, and I'm just sitting there like, wow. I can remember when we just started 2024, and we were doing the 15 days of giving glory, and we're just kind of in that recovery phase of 2023. Like, I look at everything now, and we have recovered from 2023, I think, or at least for myself. It's like, it's way behind me now. I'm not thinking about the things of 2023. I've moved on, and I'm looking at what am I going to do next? What's the next thing that I want to do? We have a 70-day prayer condition. We have other things that are happening around the world. So I'm like, wow, it's quite interesting to see how fast time moves. But it's true, the saying of time. What's it about? Healing. Time is healing, or healing just needs time. You know what I'm talking about, right? Sometimes we just need time to heal. And after that time is done, we almost forget about those things, and it feels so far away, even though 2023 was just like 5.5 months ago. But we've pushed on really fast. And it's really been, I think, Alpha Day is coming around the corner, only two weeks away. Hopefully, we can make it to the end of the 70 days, which is July 7th, and we can celebrate the beginning of this history on June 1st too. And I hope we can do it in a meaningful way. Right? The 70-day prayer condition is obviously running through June 1st. But as we do a meaningful 70 days of prayer condition, let's make sure that for the next 2 weeks, we'll really be able to celebrate June 1st, right? June 1st, Alpha Day in a meaningful way. And when you really think about it, June 1st is going to be even more meaningful in the future as more and more people come, and more people will come to this history, right? So I think let's have an amazing 2 weeks of preparation before Alpha Day comes around the corner, where we celebrate. And it's going to be from next week too. Because if you remember the story, Sunsim went to Mount Pebang 1 week before June 1st. And he went there to pray for 7 days. So I think from next week, the 1 week before June 1st, we'll probably have that time where we can pray just like Sunsim did before he went out and preached the gospel. And great thing is, this is one of the big things we have to really focus on is evangelism. Of course, direction has changed, but we're kind of in the same position of we're going to evangelize and do things and make sure we get things done and evangelize as many people as possible, whether it's through internet ministry or directly meeting them on campus and stuff like that too. All right? So by this time, guys, tomorrow, for those of you in Asia, if you're listening to this early, you guys know that there is going to be a live stream. And the live stream is going to start, this comes out 5:30 a.m. in Malaysia time, Malaysia, Taiwan. And then it starts at 10 a.m. in Korea time, which basically means that if you listen to this right when it comes out, it means we have roughly about 3.5 hours before the live stream, the YouTube live stream, the Rebel Pastor comes out, and it's going to be on Purgatory. So this time, I pre-recorded, and I am thankful and grateful that, for all the people that are always supporting this. But I will be talking about Purgatory, very, very big topic on my channel. And you guys can check out some of the comments I have on my YouTube channel. There's tons of people talking about Purgatory, tons of people talking about whether it is true or not. And it's basically the Protestants and the Catholics that are really kind of going against each other. Like the Catholics are saying, oh, it exists. And the Protestants are saying, no, Jesus was enough, so we don't need purgatory. And both sides are going back and forth. Now, there is this one person that did an amazing, he's Catholic, trying to tell, he's basically trying to prove that purgatory exists. And when I read it, it was so thorough. I super enjoyed it. This guy is probably the only one that I read, and he was very, very precise. Like this guy even went into Bible verses, and he talked about the 7 principles of sin. Right? So he says principle number 1. There is the possibility of punishment for sin even after one has received forgiveness, right? And this is something that we believe too. We believe that, for instance, what Sunseem said is sometimes even if you're forgiven, you still have to pay the price. Now, what does that mean? It means that for some sins, like let's pretend you commit the fall, you get forgiven, right? God forgives you, yet you still have to take care of the baby. It's not like you get rid of the baby too. You still have to take care of the baby, and that's, you have to go through that suffering. Right? So that's a point that I agree with. Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I agree with him. He said there's another spiritual principle is there are sins that cannot be forgiven either in this age or the next. And we know this one where it says if you blaspheme the Holy Spirit, you cannot be forgiven, right? Principle number 3, he said, is the sins of the dead may be atoned through supplication. Now, this is the only one that I think a lot of people have trouble with because he does not quote the Bible, but he quotes the Maccabees. Right? So these are like other books that were written at the Jewish times. The fourth spiritual principle he brings up is there is a place for the offenders. There is a place for the offenders. And he quotes Matthew 5:26 when he talks about, reconcile quickly with your adversary, because while you're still on the way to court, he may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will not get out until you've paid the last penny. And, basically, he's basically using a parable. Like, yeah, prison is also that spiritual prison, which is a holding place until your sins are fully paid for, which, it makes sense to me too. Spiritual principle number 5 is nothing unclean shall enter heaven. That makes sense. Spiritual principle number 6, there is a process through which the spirit of the just are made perfect. And all these things that he's bringing up, they are all, he's backing everything up with Bible verses, everything. And when I read that, I was like, yeah, a lot of these principles here is we believe in too. We may not believe in the Catholic definition of purgatory, because the Catholic definition is you have sins you need to pay for, and you'll go to this place to pay for those sins, and once you paid for, you get to go to heaven. Like, we don't believe in that. When it comes to us in Providence, the biggest thing that we believe in is that it's until you are made perfect, right? You have not fully made yourself yet. And until you make yourself, you'll be stuck in paradise until you make yourself better, right? Until you because you haven't heard the word of the gospel yet, because you were born in a country that didn't that Christianity was not the main religion, or you were in a Muslim country, you were in a Buddhist country, you were never taught about Jesus. You're from another not another planet. You're from another, say, a primitive island that doesn't even have religion. Like, there's so many other different reasons why someone needs to go to a different spiritual world, and that's because if you go, those are the reasons I named off. Some people haven't heard the gospel properly yet. Some haven't heard it at all. And some have heard only a bit of it, but not in a fair way. Some people do believe in Jesus, but they're not fully made. They're not fully perfected yet to the level that they should be before they go to heaven, right? So there are multiple reasons that we talk about in Providence about purgatory, but the Catholics are not wrong in one sense. Is there are middle worlds, and the Bible even shows that there are middle worlds too. Now, I won't talk about it like this during the Rebel Pastor, but yeah, that's the topic we're going over. And it's very, very interesting the difference between what the Catholics think and what the Protestants think. So I thought it was quite interesting. And it's one of the most popular shorts and videos I have on my YouTube channel. And this that's why I kind of do it, because for those guys who are doing social media, they say when you first start your social media, like say YouTube channel, you're gonna have like 10 to 20 topics you start off with, and you start making these videos. And after those 10 to 20 videos, you have to kind of look back and start looking at the ones that are very, very popular and start doing those things too. So that's why you're gonna see me talk about, like last week, I talked about dressing for church too. I brought it up because it's one of the most popular things on my channel. When it comes to purgatory, when it comes to, what's the other one? Jacob wrestling God. I did that last week because it's such a popular topic. One thing you will have to know when you become someone who's into social media, if you want to get popular, the one thing you have to recognize is, which it might be hard for some people, is not about what you want to say. It's not about what you want to talk about. It's about what the audience wants to hear, because that's how you become popular. So imagine you want to keep talking about, say, let's just talk about the topic I just talked about, is purgatory. If you keep talking about purgatory because you want to talk about purgatory, but yet no one is watching your videos, there's not enough views, no one is watching your videos, then you will never blow up. Why? Because that's not what the audience wants to hear. So one of the things when you're coming on social media is you need to find the things that people want to hear. And you won't know what they want to hear unless you make 10 to 20 different topics, you go over them, and then later you analyze them to see which ones are popular and which ones are not popular. And that's kind of one of the most simplest ways to get your rankings higher and higher when it comes to your social media, right? So that is something I do think that's good for all of you out there that are doing social media stuff like that too. Okay, there's something that I want to talk about which is kind of gross. Okay, this is kind of gross, and I don't know what it is. So when I'm on social media, you know, I have a TikTok, I have like Instagram, and I have YouTube. There's this interesting feed that keeps popping up. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen this, but it's gross, but I can't take my eyes off of it. It's about like a doctor scooping earwax out of people's ears. So basically, you're looking at this camera that's showing the inside of an ear and how much gross, dried up, discolored earwax they have. And the whole video is this doctor like working around the earwax and slowly taking out these giant pieces of earwax coming out of the ear. Okay? It's so gross. But yet, it is so satisfying. I have no idea why. I'm not sure if you guys have seen those videos yet. I am satisfied by it. I don't know what it is. I sit there watching in disgust and yet cheering for that doctor to get all that earwax out. I don't know why. And when I see all that, like this huge thing that he takes tweezers out and takes out the earwax, I feel so refreshed and so satisfied. I don't know what it is, guys. Is it YouTube? But I just feel, I'm like, this is so disgusting, yet so satisfying and refreshing at the same time. Like, I don't know. I remember in the past, people, like, I didn't see a lot of these, but there's a lot of those videos of people, like, popping pimples or, like, pulling out ingrown hairs or something like that. But this earwax one is the one that it's strangely satisfying. Like, it's strangely satisfying. I'll watch, like, 2 or 3 different episodes of it before I stop myself from watching more because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just wasted like 6 minutes of my life watching someone pull out earwax from someone's ear. I don't know about you guys, right? But that's just what, yeah, I'm bringing it up because I'm wondering if there's anyone else out anyone else out there like me? And I do think there is, because the one thing that I was so shocked by, these channels about taking out earwax, they have like hundreds of thousands of followers. So I'm just like, what? That's so crazy kind of thing. But I'm assuming that since we are all human beings and we're all very similar in some ways, there's got to be some of you out there that watch that earwax pulling out thing. Come on, guys. There are some of you out there. I know it. There has to be. So put in the comments so I don't feel like I'm alone. All right? Last thing before we get into the first music break of the day. I watched the movie the other day here in Taiwan. I watched the movie Civil War. And it's an American movie. And I was kind of apprehensive. I was like, should I watch this or not? Why? Because, like, if you're Americans out there, Americans that are listening to this podcast right now, when you hear a movie called Civil War, the first thing you think to yourself is, oh, this has to be like a woke movie, right? Like, this has to be woke. It's going to be about politics. It's going to be about this. It's going to be, and we kind of have that feeling inside. But for me, I'm in Taiwan, so there's not many English movies. So I'm like going, okay, I'm going to watch this movie, Civil War. And it seems like it had good ratings, but yet I still don't trust the ratings. So I went to go watch it. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I was pleasantly surprised. I was shocked how good it is. Because it's nothing about wokeness. It's nothing about, this Republican Party or the Democrats or Trump or anything like that. It's nothing. It's got nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. And maybe part of it is because I had low expectations, but the movie was actually very good, and it really brought out a ton of emotion. It wasn't even about the Civil War. Like a civil war going on in America. It wasn't even about that. The Civil War is the background story, but the real story is about the journalists that are taking pictures. They're like photojournalists. They're not the ones writing down opinions. These are photojournalists. They're there just to take the pictures. And you kind of go through the journey of these three journalists that are kind of taking pictures as they go through this Civil War. And it's really compelling, actually, to see what these photojournalists are going through, because photojournalism is something that is a real job that people do in wars. Like, there are photojournalists right now in Gaza, in Israel, in Palestine, and they're amongst the people and they're taking these pictures. They're risking their lives to do it. And they're seeing the most inhumane things happen right in front of their eyes. And you kind of, in this movie, you see humanity at its best and its worst. You're going through, there's like two main characters there, which is these two journalists. One is a very young journalist who is up and coming, but they're going through all the emotions of seeing things for the first time. And then you have the older journalist, which is more famous. And you kind of go through this Civil War through their eyes. And with the young girl, you get to see things for the first time and how this girl reacts to it. And then you see this older woman who is kind of seeing things in a new way because this new young girl is there, and she begins to kind of see her own life through her, kind of thing. And I'm telling you guys, in the U.S., it really doesn't have anything to do with politics. It's about the journey of these two photojournalists. I enjoyed it. And I'll tell you now, there are some scenes that are super graphic. But it definitely wasn't gratuitous. It wasn't there just for the sake of being there. There was a reason why it was that graphic, because you're seeing these photojournalists experiencing it. One who's seen it so much that it doesn't faze them, and then this new photojournalist who's never seen that type of violence, or this type of violence, or what human beings can do to each other, and how they react for the first time. So there is graphic violence in it. It's pretty gross stuff too. But it was there to show the worst of humanity and what these photojournalists have to kind of go through in their life. And when I saw, like, it was compelling. It was moving. It was something where you're in shock sometimes, but you're also there experiencing it together with these photojournalists. So I would say, if it was out of 10, if it was out of to give it a score out of 10. On Rotten Tomatoes, 6 is something that you can watch, right? It's like, if it's under 6, don't watch it. Over 6, you can watch it. I would give it like a 7.3, 7.4. Yeah, so I was pleasantly surprised. I was so thankful it wasn't a woke movie, but it was, I was very, very surprised of how who this director is. I don't know who the director is, but they did such a good job on this to make it not political. And the political or all that, the Civil War is all in the background. Is not even the main point. There's not even some type of woke message like, oh, hey guys, don't be like, there's no woke message in there at all. It is about humanity, and these two photojournalists, you get to see things through their eyes. So if you guys ever have time, if you guys are to watch a movie, I do actually recommend this movie. It's very good. Surprisingly very, very good. All right? Either way. So yeah, that's kind of segment 1 today. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. Today we do have Bible history. We'll go over Exodus chapter 6 through 10, which is going through the 10 plagues. But we'll get to that after this first music break of the day. right, so let's get into today's Bible study, or not Bible study, word study. And every Wednesday we do have the Bible history word study. And last week we did Exodus chapters 1 through 5, basically going through the story of the birth of Moses, how Moses fled, went to Midian, found a wife, came back, there's a burning bush. And now, all the way up to chapter 5, he already goes to the Pharaoh and tells him, hey, God has kind of sent me, and I want to let you guys know that, God wants us to go worship 3 days into the wilderness. And of course, the Pharaoh wasn't too happy with this. And what did he do? He said, okay, well then let's make life harder for the Israelites. How are you going to make it harder? Well, we're going to take away their straw for making bricks. They have to find their own straw, but have the same quota, which basically made the Israelites' life miserable. Okay? And this is all because of who? It's all because of Moses. Now, let's move into chapter 6 of Exodus. And Exodus chapter 6 kind of begins with God showing support for Moses and affirming that God is going to keep his promise for them. So basically, God tells Moses to tell the Israelites, hey, let them know that I'm still with them. I'm going to take care of Israel. I'm going to make sure that I fulfill my promises. I'm with you. Don't worry. The promises will be fulfilled. Now, how did the people take it? Now, this is not surprising. The people found it very hard to listen to Moses. And you'd be like, why would it be so hard to listen to Moses? Well, if you think about it, in their eyes, Moses is the reason why they're going through their difficulty. It's because Moses went to the Pharaoh, and then the Pharaoh makes their life even more difficult. They look at it as Moses' fault. So if you think about it, it's hard to listen to someone who is the very reason for your difficulties and hardships. You know what I mean? I would say, for even when you look at it in reality today, I think it would make you almost not trust this person, and you may even feel that Moses is making things up and he just wants to cover his own butt for making things hard for everyone in Israel, kind of thing, right? So, here's the situation that we're getting into. You see that the Israelites don't really trust Moses. So we move on to the next segment, right? We're still in chapter 6. God tells Moses, all right, it's time. We need to go to Pharaoh, and we got to start this again. Tell the Pharaoh, you got to let my people go. But of course, you got to understand what Moses' situation is right now. And you got to understand that Moses is in a situation where he doesn't have a lot of confidence in himself already. Like you've already heard it from last week. He stutters, or he can't speak very well. He's got no confidence, and even when God, the Almighty God, tells him, he still doesn't trust or have any confidence in himself. So on top of this, think about it. Imagine you're someone who doesn't even have much confidence in yourself, and then your own people already distrust you or don't like you. How much confidence would you really, really have? And when God tells Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell him to let Israel go, Moses was afraid. He was discouraged, can't speak very well. And, in that situation, God's like, hey, go tell him. And Moses is like, well, and 2 more times he tells God that he can't really speak that well. So you kind of look at what Moses' kind of mental condition was at that time. Which moves us to Exodus chapter 7. And Exodus chapter 7, we start off with one of the verses we use in the central figure lessons is to know how God and the prophets work. And it's basically because Moses is afraid and he can't speak too well, God tells him to use his brother Aaron. It basically tells him, look, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go out of his country, kind of thing, right? So God is telling Moses that this is the time, you know what? I understand now, you're discouraged, you can't do this, we're going to use your brother, but now you're going to be in the position of God. Because everything you say, Aaron's got to say everything that you tell him to say, right? And we get an idea of what it's like to be a prophet, or in essence, what it's like to be God, the one who receives the words and gives it to the prophet, right? And then God proceeds to tell Moses what is going to unfold. And we already heard this in chapter 1 and 2, I believe. Oh, no, in chapters 1 through 5, God already told Moses about this during the time of the burning bush, which is probably chapters 4 or 5, right? And God tells Moses, this is what's going to happen. You're going to tell Pharaoh to let your people go. But the Pharaoh's heart's going to be hardened, and he's not going to listen to you. And this is when I'm going to show him wonders and signs until he eventually lets Israel leave, right? So basically, God is telling Moses, this is the reality of the situation. This is what's going to happen. So don't worry, because it's going to happen exactly this way. So God is telling him, this is the blueprint. It's going to happen this way. So don't freak out when he comes against you, right? So Moses goes eventually to see the Pharaoh. Okay? And the Pharaoh says, all right, well, give me a sign. Show me that God is with you. And of course, the very first sign that Moses was shown with the burning bush was the staff turning to a snake. So Moses throws the staff to the ground. It turns into a large snake. And then Pharaoh summons his sorcerers and says, all right, sorcerers, magicians, this is what he did. What can you do? And guess what happened? The Pharaoh side did the exact same thing. They threw their staffs on the ground and it became snakes, which is quite interesting that they were doing the exact same miracle that God was allowing Moses to do, which kind of says God is not the only one able to do these types of miracles. The only thing that was very interesting about this, the sign that was shown, is at the end, the snake, Moses' snake, swallowed up the other snakes, right? Showing that it's more stronger. However, Pharaoh didn't listen. He's like, what? That's not a sign. My magicians and my sorcerers can do the exact same thing. And this is where we begin the 10 plagues. All right? So the first plague is the river Nile turning to blood. And Moses turns the Nile to blood. The fish begin to die and begins to stink everywhere. This happened for an entire week. But the interesting thing is, the Pharaoh calls his sorcerers again, and guess what happens? The exact same thing. They were able to turn the water to blood. Then we go to chapter 8. Exodus chapter 8, we go to the second plague, which is frogs. And frogs come out of the Nile, and they're like everywhere. However, the Pharaoh summons the sorcerers and magicians, and what happens? They can do the exact same thing. However, from the second plague, there's something that you get to see that there starts to be a little bit difference between Moses and the magicians and sorcerers. Is that the magicians and sorcerers couldn't stop this plague, which moves to the third plague, which is gnats. So these gnats are everywhere, on people, on animals. They're everywhere. And the Pharaoh says, all right, magicians, try to produce gnats. But they tried to produce, like verse 18 says, when the magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, they could not. And when you go even further, in verse 19, the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. So even the magicians and sorcerers recognize this is not of human origin. But Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he would not listen, just as the Lord had said. The fourth plague is flies. And this is where God becomes he begins to do things even in a more greater way. In verse 22, he says, when the flies come on that day, I'm going to deal differently with the land of Goshen. Now, Goshen is a land where the Israelites lived. Even at the time of Joseph, that was the land that was given to Jacob and his family because they were shepherds, right? So God says, the land of Goshen where my people live, no swarms of flies will be there. So you will know that I, the Lord, am in this land. I will make a distinction between my people and your people. This sign will occur tomorrow. So it wasn't just flies everywhere. There was a separation between God's people and Egyptians. Now, interestingly, this is the fourth plague, and from here, this is where the Pharaoh begins to soften his heart. And he's like, all right, you guys can go worship. However, You cannot go worship 3 days into the wilderness. You must worship in Egypt. So it's like, yeah, okay, God, I believe that's you, God, but now let me compromise. And I think it's something that we as human beings do too, right? We're like, hey, God, I don't know if I really want to do this, but if I do this, can you give me this? But God, can you compromise on this? God, can you compromise with this too? So here is the Pharaoh compromising with God, and God's like, nope. And the next plague was the livestock. And once again, God separates only the livestock of the Egyptians would die, but not the livestock of Israel. Which moves to the sixth plague, which is hail. And this hail, right? So hail comes down from the heavens, and people were told to go into the shelters, but the people that did listen were pelted by the hail and they died. Animals and people. Which moves us into chapter 10. Exodus chapter 10 says what? We get into the seventh plague, which is locusts, which are like grasshoppers that eat like grass and grains and stuff. And of course, the locusts come in and eat all the grass and the grains of the Egyptians. And finally, once again, verse 10, Pharaoh says to Moses, "The Lord be with you. If I let you go along with your women and children, clearly you are bent on evil. No, have only the men go and worship the Lord, since that's what you've been asking for." Then Moses and Aaron were driven out of Pharaoh's presence. Which leads us to the eighth, right? The eighth plague is darkness. No one could see anyone else or move about for 3 days. Yet all the Israelites had light in the places where they lived. Pharaoh said to Moses, "Get out of my sight. Make sure you do not appear before me again. The day you see my face, you will die." And Moses says, "Sure, I'll never appear before you again." Right? So here we are. That's the end of chapter 10. And that's the end of today's Bible history. We'll go over the last plagues and what happens. You know, of course, we're going to have the parting of the Red Sea coming up pretty soon too, when we'll do chapters 11 through 15 next week. Okay? So there it is, guys. That is today's Bible history word study. We went through Exodus chapter 6 through 10. Hope you guys really enjoy this. Leave some comments below if this is something that you really enjoy or like to do. It's almost like we're reading the Bible together in a summarized form. Okay? So there it is, guys. That is today's Bible history word study. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Before we get into the final segment, which is Health is Happiness, Yen Yu from Singapore, doing a 6 weeks on injuries. And this is the last episode of the 6. So you can listen to it every Friday, the last segment. And this is basically, she's talking about what she's learned about preventing injuries while she's been sharing. Okay? So before we get to Health is Happiness, let's get into the last music break of the day.
我看见主的模样 So alive, so alive 我听见主的声音 So clear, so clear 他的爱融化我心使我灵魂安然平静，那话语充满能力，使我能看见改变的神迹。多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历。持守我对天地约定，我看见力气前进着 So alive, so alive 我听见话语满溢着 So clear, so clear 主的爱始终如 生灵强烈引导我心灵，当代有触痛在宝贵时机，我会怀抱感谢，忠诚时间到底，出发不来你。多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历风雨，一生用尽真心，至少我对天地约定。多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历风雨，一生用尽真心，至少我对天地约定。我看见主的模样，so 我来，so 我来。
Okay, so let's get into today's final segment for today's Wednesday podcast. Of course, we have Health is Happiness with Yen Yu over there in Singapore. She's studying physiotherapy. And for 5 weeks already, she's been talking about preventing injuries. And today is the final segment in her preventing injuries series. So please, I hope you guys will enjoy this, gain a lot from it, learn from a lot from it too. Okay, so please welcome all the way from Singapore. This is Yen Yu with Health is Happiness.
Hello everyone, my name is Yuan Yu and I'm from Singapore. I'm currently finishing up my studies in physiotherapy. On today's topic of Health is Happiness, I will be sharing more about my sporting journey and what I've learned. I'd like to give thanks to the Holy Trinity, Pastor Sky and Julius for this opportunity to share. Without further ado, I'll begin. A brief background on my sporting journey thus far is that from primary school to junior college, I did a little bit of gymnastics and played netball for the rest of the time there. But post-junior college onwards, I delved more into strengthening and middle distance running. For strength training wise, I was thankful to get to learn from a strengthening and conditioning coach. And for middle distance running, the reason why I joined or I delved more into it was that through doing netball, I found out that I'm better at running as compared to reading the gameplay and playing netball itself. And I managed to cross paths with various coaches, and I'm currently training with my current track and field coach, and he is an experienced middle distance coach in Singapore. When I first started out middle distance running, the first 1 to 2 years were more of getting adapted to it, learning what it's about, learning the basics. But it was still quite a steep learning curve because my current coach does have the tendency to push his students and want them to improve as much as they can, which is good, right? The intention is good. And during this time, I had the chance to decide whether I wanted to continue to run competitively because training really wasn't easy. After much prayer and discussion with the Trinity, I was deeply inspired that at least for the time of university, I really wanted to run and train competitively. This was because with the challenge of being pushed outside my comfort zone every single training, I really got to learn so much, which I will delve more on it later on. And because of this reason, I knew that God wanted to personally train me through running, and therefore I said yes to training competitively in track, at least for the time I'm in university. For post-university, I do still want to run, but the intensity-wise, I will discuss again with the Trinity. Okay, moving on, I'll share a little bit about the lessons I've learned through running for the past 3+ years. The first lesson I learned was about consistency. Is training easy? No, it really isn't. And majority of the time it's tough. I guess that's why it's called training, right? And in the past 3+ years of training more seriously in running, I've come to face a good share of good times of improvement, times of slower improvement, and also times of plateau or even deterioration. But what I've learned is that as long as you put in effort consistently, even on the days you don't feel as motivated, you still show up, you still get the work done, you will be able to break through and see improvements. Looking back, I recall what Sansanim also shared, which is to do until the end, right? To do it till the end, and that's part of this year's theme. Some proverbs that I found from September 2022, it says that in Revelations chapter 1 verse 8, God says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. This means we need to persevere and do it from start to finish. Another proverb says, if God and the Lord Christ are with you and you do it until the end, you will prevail even if there is only 1% possibility of winning. Also, to better understand this idea of doing it until the end, God worked through one of my teammates to share a word of encouragement that I really needed and really appreciated on a day of training recently, just in the recent weeks, where I was feeling a lot more tired and unmotivated than usual. Logically, I knew that training wouldn't be easy and I just need to persevere, but I still wasn't feeling that motivated. My friend shared with me about this American coach and a retired American athlete. His name is Mark Coogan. So this coach coached this Olympic 10K runner called Alexi Papas, and she set the national record for Greece. So what he said was the rule of thirds. He said that whenever you're chasing a big dream, you're supposed to feel good a third of the time, okay a third of the time, and crappy or not great a third of the time. And if you feel roughly in those ratios, it means that you are in fact chasing a dream. If you feel too good all the time, you're not pushing yourself enough. And if you feel too fatigued, you might be burning out or having a mental health challenge and you need to reevaluate. To maximize your progress towards difficult goals, you should be well outside of your comfort zone enough, also known as feeling lousy a third of the time. Much more than that is risky, and much less than that is lazy. When I heard this, I felt comforted and motivated after having clearer expectations. I knew that training wouldn't be easy, but knowing this, I knew that, okay, the ratios are probably going to be a third feeling good, a third feeling okay, and a third feeling not so good. And for that day, it was likely a day that, I'm not going to feel too good, I'm not going to feel that motivated, but what I need to do is to show up and do what I can, and that's enough. Okay. Moving on to the second lesson that I learned, which is about the value of developing, the value of being good in something. Truly, it's so valuable to develop yourself in areas of your individuality or areas that you're good at. Personally, for me, there are many others who are much better in running, but that isn't the main point, right? I do think that at least within myself, within sports, running is something I find a bit easier to improve in, a bit easier to get the hang of. Therefore, through training in running, through investing time and effort in it, I've learned many valuable lessons about myself, different mentalities, and also lessons about God and this history that I would not have learned if not for running. Some proverbs that I found from May 2020 about individuality, it says that God said that everyone has their own rare characteristic or individuality. For example, having special characteristic in loving God, having a rare character of having a kind heart, or having a strong mentality. If you have discovered your characteristic, then you have to show it well. One of the ways to show it well is to remove dirty things, in other words, sins or bad character. Another proverb says, if you do not have specialty, then you develop yourself a specialty. I'll repeat this again. If you do not have specialty, then you yourself develop a specialty for yourself by taking action. If there is something you do well consistently, if you do it, it will become your specialty. With this, I hope that everyone can also find something that they like or something that you find easier to be better in and develop yourself in the area. It can be a hobby, it can be teaching the word, it can be managing others, and the list goes on. Thirdly, I also learned a lesson about what it means to give your heart, soul, and mind. This builds on the previous point, right? I find that each training that I go for is almost like a miniaturization of life. There's a build-up, there's a climax, and it ends off with a fruit of your efforts, right? In terms of running, there's a build-up, which is the warm-up, right? The start of your workout is manageable. There is a climax where you feel that, oh my gosh, can I even do it? This is very uncomfortable. I want to give up, but I'll push on. And there's a fruit of your efforts. Physically, you get stronger. Mentally, you find a stronger mentality. Spiritually, maybe you might realize something about yourself, something that you've been praying about, or something about God. Through running, I find that I get to experience this, and I get to experience what it means to give all of your all, your heart, and your life to push yourself and finish the training. I think this relates very well to what it says in the Bible, right? Matthew 22:37. Jesus replied about what is the greatest commandment, and he said, "Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, and with all of your soul, and with all of your mind." I find that through running, it really pushes me to know that it's very possible to push yourself to your limits, and that what you think is your limit might not be your actual limit. And beyond this, being able to give my all through running inspires me to want to do the same in other aspects of my life, and I find that very inspiring for myself. Okay, moving forward, I'll be training for upcoming 10 kilometers road race and a 5 and 10 kilometer track race in the next 2 months. I will aim and I'll strive to continue to do my best, and I really hope to give thanks to God, because through track, He has trained me and He has taught me so many things. I hope that through doing my best in these races and the trainings leading up to it, that I can also give thanks to God for all that He has done for me. Thank you all for listening to my story. I'm very thankful for God, for He has taught me through these experiences, and I wish the same for everyone, the best in all they do, that God can speak to everyone through the things that they're working on, and I hope that everyone can continue striving our best in all that we do. Take care and goodbye.
And thank you so much, Yuan for another wonderful episode of Health is Happiness. And if you guys haven't read, there's been a bunch of comments coming out about this segment of preventing injuries. People are going back to listen to some other parts because, you know, injury is just a part of life. And I will be looking back at it more often too, because, you know, I've reached that age where injuries is a more common part of life. All right. So there it is, guys. That is today's Wednesday podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a wonderful and awesome Wednesday service. And then we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly, so let's realign. Just listen and fill your mind.